Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 23rd of November of 2025. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. So as we discussed during the previous video, Europe is trying to change the 28-point plan of the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump. Europeans are trying to change the following. They insist on deleting one of the key points, the territorial division, including the recognition of the entire Donetsk region and Crimea as Russian. The statement emphasizes the position that borders should not be changed by force. Europe also considers reducing the Ukraine army to 600,000 troops. So according to information we have, they want to give the Ukrainians the right to save their army on the level of 800,000 troops. Separately, they no doubts about the reliability of any formal security guarantees from Russia, as previous agreements have already been violated. Another issue concerns frozen Russian assets. Europeans oppose any mechanism that would allow the Kremlin to benefit from them. According to Trump's plan, some assets are used to restore Ukraine under US control, while others are invested in joint US-Russian project. So this is a very important situation. And today, on the territory of the Switzerland, Europeans and Ukrainians are trying to convince the United States of America that the United States of America must change the plan. So currently we start receiving reports about the situation. The Ukrainian delegation has begun negotiations in Geneva on Trump's peace plan. A meeting was held with the national security advisors of the leaders of Great Britain, France and Germany, writes Yermak, head of Zelensky's office. The next meeting is with the US delegation. We are in a very constructive mood. Yermak writes that a number of meetings in various formats will take place today. So the meetings have already started. As for now, the meetings between Ukraine and the European leaders. Most likely in coming hours, the meeting between them and the representatives of the United States of America will also take place. Today, states will be represented by Rubio and Witkoff. They will take part in talks in Geneva on a settlement in Ukraine. So one thing is important. Now we see that Ukraine and European countries are trying to make changes and to make this 28-point plan completely unacceptable for the Russian Federation. And of course, the question is whether the United States of America will accept these changes or not. So if you ask my opinion, I believe that the situation here will be developed as following. First of all, the United States of America will accept changes of the European countries. They will change everything that we have just discussed about army, about Ukrainian army, about territories, about frozen assets, about everything. So this is a very important situation. The next step would be that the generals of the United States of America, the Minister of Army, will travel to Russia, to Moscow, with the purpose to negotiate with the Russian Federation, with the representatives of the Russian Federation. And obviously, and everybody must understand that these talks will lead to nowhere. So because Russia will deny, will reject, will not accept this, let's say, option and this plan, this new version of the plan. So the question is, so what the United States of America is going to do with this? So today I came to conclusion that the United States of America will do the next. If you remember, during the previous months, during the previous days, there were lots of talks, lots of statements made by the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, that he believes that before making any agreement, before signing any agreement, sometimes parties need to fight. They need to fight a bit more. Another month, another week, or another year, but they need to fight. So that is why I believe that the President of the United States of America, when Ukraine rejects its proposal, and after Russia rejects a new version of the plan, the United States of America will impose sanctions both on Ukraine and on the Russian Federation. Most likely, the United States of America will stop sending and supplying Ukraine with weapons, and the United States of America will stop sharing with the intelligence information. But At the same time, the United States of America will impose additional economical sanction on the Russian Federation. The United States of America will try to ruin completely the Russian energy sector. We are talking about oil, we are talking about gas. I'm talking first of all about trading with oil and gas. So Trump will try to create a situation when both the Russians and the Ukrainians are not able to continue fighting. Ukraine will not have American weapons, and they will not have the intelligence information, and the Russian Federation from their side will stop getting additional money, additional finance to support and supply their army and to support the special military operation. So this is going to be the situation when neither the Russians nor the Ukrainians are able to continue fighting with each other, and this can lead to beginning of the real talks, of real negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. So most likely this is a short-term, let's say, plan of the President of the United States of America, and the implementation of this plan we're going to see during the next following months. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground. And first, let's talk about the Zaporizhzhia direction, where the Russians continue their offensive operation. During the previous 24 hours, we received a lot of very important and interesting changes. First of all, according to different sources, this evening the Russians began their major offensive operation, and now the Russians are trying to break through Ukrainian defense and answer the city of Gulay-Polye from the north and from the east. According to the latest updates, the Russians, by the end of the 23rd of November of 2025, captured completely the settlement of Zelyony Gay. This information was provided by neutral mappers, and Russians captured more than 60% of the settlement of Chervone. Furthermore, the pro-Russian sources published this video, and here we can see another cemetery that was created somewhere on the Zaporizhzhia direction. In this video we can see how the Russians were walking through the destroyed vehicles and tanks of the armored forces of Ukraine. Somewhere in the Zaporizhzhia direction we have added this icon softly, but this video shows that lots of weapons, lots of equipment were destroyed by Russians during their Zaporizhzhia offensive, and that the Russians continue. And this video also confirms that despite all attempts from the Ukrainian side to stabilize the situation, they can't do this, and most likely it seems that it's already impossible. Another important thing is that Russians continue their offensive operation in the northern flank of the Zaporizhzhia direction. During the previous 24 hours, according to pro-Russian sources, the armed forces of the Russian Federation managed to establish complete control over the settlements of Tikhe and Vidradne. This video was published by pro-Russian sources, and here we can see how exactly the clashes for these territories were taking place. And based on this report, and based on the report that was published by the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, we adjusted the map. So this is the situation by the end of the 22nd of November, and this is the situation by the end of the 23rd of November. The only important thing that I would like to point to attention, that currently the Russians for some reason stopped publishing videos with flags from different settlements in this area. For example, yesterday the Russians reported that they managed to secure the settlement of Zaporizhzhia, but we still haven't received anything. We're talking about videos that can confirm Russian control over the territory. Just the report of the Minister of Defense and this video where we see no flags. And today the Russians also announced that they managed to capture Vidradne, but yet we haven't received even a single video that can confirm this. It doesn't mean that the Russians haven't captured these territories. Most likely these two villages under complete control. But this situation most likely confirms that the pace of the Russian offensive operation is getting higher. The Russians are moving much faster right now, and sometimes the Russians don't have enough of time to secure this area, but they move further. So that is why they cannot make videos in this or that settlement, because it's still unsafe. Maybe there are still Ukrainians, and Ukrainians are already behind Russian main forces or something like this. So the situation is very complicated, and most likely in coming days we will get confirmation of these words by facts that the Russians during upcoming days will be able to advance even further, maybe even in the northwestern or western directions, or maybe the Russians will advance in the southern direction. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the city of Pokrovsk. The situation is very complicated in this area. You know that during the previous 24 hours, lots of pro-Ukrainian sources began publishing information that the situation is very okay for Ukrainians. Some pro-Ukrainian sources reported that they managed to secure and to clear up to 30 or even 50% of the city of Pokrovsk. The pro-Ukrainian sources are saying that the situation has been stabilized in this area, that the Russians were defeated to the north of the railways, that Ukrainians managed to improve their positions significantly, that Ukrainians managed to unblock their contingent on the territory of the city of Mirnograd, and based on the words that were and statements that were published by pro-Ukrainian sources, it seems that within the next 2-3 days, Ukrainians will be able to capture Moscow, the capital of the Russian Federation. But when talking about the real situation on the ground and real geolocations, we see that the picture is completely different. We understand that most likely due to the current negotiations on the territory of the Switzerland and on the territory of Geneva, most likely Ukrainians are trying to create this media picture when the situation is stable, when everything is okay, and when Ukrainians are winning, not are losing the ground and not are losing cities and towns. So that is why we believe that all these statements regarding the situation in the city of Pokrovsk serve just one purpose: to carry out successful talks in Geneva with the American delegation, because most likely tomorrow the situation will start worsening once again and will start developing once again in the favor of the Russian Federation. Anyway, let's wait and see what is going to be next. But as of the 23rd of November, we have very important changes. This is the situation by the end of the 22nd of November. This is the situation by the end of the 23rd of November. The Russians secured the territory of the city of Pokrovsk around the settlement of Katsubinskovo, the street, this area, and furthermore, Ukrainian sources of 25th Airborne Brigade published this video, and here we can see how Ukrainians were attacking and FPV droning positions of the armed forces of the Russian Federation on the territory of the Zaporizhzhia street, so in the most northern part of the city of Pokrovsk. So this attack took place exactly at this point. So based on this video, we came to conclusion that the Russians cut physically the TO-515 road and that the Russians managed to finish the encirclement of the city of Mirnograd without any chances for evacuation. So this is the situation by the end of the 22nd of November, and this is the situation by the end of the 23rd of November. The armed forces of the Russian Federation encircled the city of Mirnograd completely. Furthermore, during the previous 24 hours, we received a video from the northern part of the city of Rodinska. This is the situation by the end of the 22nd of November, and this is the 23rd of November. So most likely the Russians are about to finish the battle for this territory and to force Ukrainians to fall back further in the northwestern direction. At the same time, the Russians continue controlling the roads and supply lines in this area. Here we can see another vehicle that was trying to get the city of Rodinska but was destroyed as a result of FPV drone attack. Now let's talk about the Shakhovo pocket. The Russians continue their offensive operation. So this is the situation by the 23rd of November, and this is the situation by the 22nd. As you can see, the Russians managed to improve their positions in the central part of the settlement. We came to this conclusion based on the video that was published by pro-Ukrainian sources. Here we can see how Ukrainians with FPV drones were attacking positions of the armed forces of the Russian Federation through the settlement of Shakhovo. Based on this video, we came to conclusion that the Russians managed to improve their position significantly in the southern part and that the Russians continue advancing. Most likely in coming days, Ukrainians would be forced to fall back from this area completely and to move further in the northern direction, if Ukrainians of course are able to break through and escape this cauldron. Now let's discuss the situation in the city of Konstantinovka. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians improved their positions along N20 road and N32 road, this one. So it seems that the Russians began their major offensive operation, and now the Russians are tasked to capture villages of Stepanovka and Bereztok. I would like to remind you that 3 days ago, the commander of the group of forces South stated that the Russians are tasked to secure more than 50 or even 60% of the city of Konstantinovka Konstantinovka before the 15th of December. So the Russian commander of this group of forces doesn't have a lot of time, so that is why he must act. And most likely we are facing the beginning of a major offensive operation towards the city of Konstantinovka with the purpose to secure up to 50% of the settlement before the 15th of December of 2025. So most likely everything along this red line the Russians are tasked to capture within the next months. Now let's move further and let's discuss the most important direction of the previous 24 hours, and we are talking about the Siversk direction. The Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation today stated that as a result of clashes, the units of the group of forces south managed to establish complete control over the settlement by the name of Pazyona. So the Russians call this settlement as Petrovskaya. This is a former title of the village. So let's compare the map between the dates. So this is the situation by the end of the 20th of November of 2025, and this is probably the day when a turning moment occurred. So the Russians launched their offensive operation probably 2 or 3 days before, but on somewhere around the 20th of November, Ukrainian defense collapsed and Ukrainians began retreating. So starting on the 20th of November, we began changing the map significantly in Russian favor. So by the end of the 22nd of November, the Russians secured completely the settlement of Zvanovka. We got this video and we had the report of the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation. And here we can see how Russians raised their flag on the most northern part of the settlement somewhere on the 22nd of November of 2025. The next day, so today, on the 23rd of November, the Russians, according to the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, also captured the settlement of Pazyona. As for this settlement of Pazyona or Petrovskaya, we still haven't received even a single video that can confirm this, but we believe that this is the current situation. And obviously, if this information is correct, we see that the Russians now are trying to advance further, and most likely they will try to advance further. First of all, to improve their positions along MO3 road. We're talking about the villages of Privilya, Golubovka, Bandarna, Khromovka, and Vasyukovka. Of course, Russians will try to take these settlements and to cut them in cauldron or to cut them encircled. Furthermore, the Russians will continue advancing further in the northern direction towards one of the most important supply lines between the cities of Siversk and Slaviansk. So the battle for the city of Siversk is coming to its final phase. The Russians most likely will try to capture these territories also, or to improve their positions also as much as possible during 2025, and to get the outskirts or to begin the Slaviansk offensive operation, which will be prolonged and continue in 2026. As for the Liman direction, during the previous 24 hours, nothing special happened. The Russians established complete control with FPV drones over the city of Liman. They destroy everything that enters the city with additional supply and support. The situation is under complete control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. The main logistic lines and the main logistic roads under complete control. So Ukrainians suffer huge losses. And as you can see, Ukrainians stop using heavy vehicles, armored vehicles. They're just using light trucks because it's cheap and it's not so expensive. As for the Kupiansk direction, during the previous 24 hours, the most important updates came from the settlement of Barova. Pro-Ukrainian sources published this video, and this is a very important video where we can see dozens of Russians that answered the settlement of Boguslavka from the south, and when Russians answered the village, Ukrainians began attacking them with FPV drones. So due to this video, we expect that the settlement of Boguslavka would be captured by the armed forces of the Russian Federation in coming days, and then Russians will continue offensive operation further towards the city of Barova. As for the Kupiansk direction, during the previous 24 hours, we received lots of videos of how the units of the group of forces west continued their offensive operation with the purpose to secure the rest of the villages in this area. During the previous day, lots of videos were published from the city of Kupiansk, it's Uzlavoy, from Podolo, from Kucherevka. Russians continue controlling the main supply lines, and everything this enters this territory is destroyed by Russians immediately. So the situation is very complicated, but there are still lots of job to do for the Russians until they finish the battle for the entire Russian side of the River Voskol. And that's it for today. Military of a Summary channel reminds to we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.